I'm Fred Warner of 7Q, and today we are going to be looking at the Aston Martin Formula One and the Honda integration failure. They are in a terrible state of affairs. They're losing hundreds of millions of pounds every year. They've got a huge amount of debt. So each part of the car and the power unit will have the requirements fleshed out and the design will be working towards that. Now, where are they doing it? Well, this is where some of the problems have probably started. From all accounts, they were under-resourced and have been under-resourced up until very recently. The fact that that didn't seem to be known by Aston Martin shows that there was a lack of governance. They've recruited Adrian Newey, but of course, he didn't join until 2025, the last year of the programme, on what should have been a 3 to 4 year programme, and he's joined for the last year of it. So everybody trying to point the finger at the guy who's come in very late in the day. But what really strikes me is, where's the governance? How did you not know at every stage of the way what was going on? Well, there's two teams in two different places, then with multiple sub-teams of different parts of those teams, with suppliers into those teams. Who's tracking the benefits? The why? Who's tracking whether or not we're going to deliver the scope? A program like this should be integrated from the start. There's joint development of the specifications, there's joint development of the outlines and boundaries that we can work in, there's joint development of the simulations of how it's all going to go together, and right through the process it needs to be integrated because ultimately it's an integrated package. Hey everybody, I'm Fred Warner of 7Q, and today we are going to be looking at the Aston Martin Formula One and the Honda integration failure. Now, I'm going to be using my program intervention and 7Q terminology in this analysis because what we want to get to the bottom of is, why has this huge program of huge spend failed, leaving Aston Martin? They must be so red-faced inside that team, and in terms of the investors, and the people must be climbing all over them. Terribly embarrassing. So let's start off and explain a bit about the overall intent of the program. Why were Aston Martin partnering with Honda? To become a full works team. Now, for those of you who don't know, a full works team means that you are the supplier of both your car and your power unit, and that nobody else is involved and can influence you or give you a disadvantage compared to anybody else. So for example, Mercedes are a works team, as are Ferrari. They supply their own car and they supply their own power unit. They also supply other people. So if you're a McLaren or you're an Alpine, you take Mercedes engines, and therefore you're called a customer team, not a works team. And the same for Haas, they take a Ferrari engine, Cadillac's taken a Ferrari engine, and so on. Now, why would they want to be a full works team? Their strategy was that this was going to be the thing that's required to take their car forwards to win championships. Now, I'd argue, not only with hindsight, but already done up front, McLaren have already showed in the past 2 or 3 seasons that you can win championships without being a full works team, that as a customer team you can win. People have this real negativity about it. Many people have done it in the past successfully. But why else would they do it? They'll do it to grow the Aston Martin Lagonda brand. Now, remember, there's a car company here. You think of the James Bond cars of the day. They are in a terrible state of affairs. They're losing hundreds of millions of pounds every year. They've got a huge amount of debt. The way that shareholders view a company like Aston Martin Car Company right now is that they have huge amounts of debt, massive amounts of debt. They're losing money every year. Their cash flow is always constrained, and their products haven't been necessarily as up to date as they need to be. So overall, the shares have tanked, and it's because the car company is in pain. That's why Aston Martin Formula One team wants to win championships. It brings prestige and heritage to the brand. So what is it that Aston Martin and Honda decided to do? Well, you've got new regulations for 2026. So everyone's starting from scratch. One of the key points is that comes with a new power unit. So it's an opportunity to make a change. For example, going back with Honda. So they need to design and build a championship winning car. Now, I'm being overly simplistic here, but that then breaks down into the requirements and the specifications against each area. So each part of the car and the power unit will have the requirements fleshed out, and the design will be working towards that. Now, where are they doing it? Well, this is where some of the problems have probably started. That Aston Martin have been working away in Silverstone, while Honda have been working away in Sakura. And as it turns out, not in a very integrated way. So how have they approached it? Well, their intent seems to have been, Honda does a power unit in space provided by Aston Martin, and Aston Martin develop car ready for power unit. Now, you're probably already wondering, where does it all come together? I think that's been part of the problem. We'll come on to the approach. because it's very late in the day they've been integrating in a program. It doesn't make any sense as to why they would do that. Now, who have you got? Well, if we take Honda, by all accounts, they released their engineers from the F1 program when they decided to knee-jerk pull out of Formula One just before they won the championship with Red Bull. And they released their engineers into other programs, maybe EV and aviation, what have you. So when they committed to getting back in, from all accounts, they were under-resourced and have been under-resourced up until very recently. The fact that that didn't seem to be known by Aston Martin shows that there was a lack of governance, which I'll come on to later. Then if we go to Aston Martin, they've recruited Adrian Newey, but of course, he didn't join until 2025, the last year of the program, on what should have been a 3 to 4 year program, and he's joined for the last year of it. So everybody trying to point the finger at the guy who's come in very late in the day, who then, right, you'd argue he joined in early 2025, and November was when he realised how far behind they were, maybe a bit of delay there. However, we go on to when it will happen. So they made the announcement, it was May 23, and then you really, in sort of January, February 26, you're going to be looking at, let's get this car live. So you've only got 2.5 years. It may sound like a long time to you, but 2.5 years to develop a whole new power unit and a whole new car to totally new regulations, get them integrated, get it working, get it tested, is actually not very much time in reality. It's a very tight timeline. And then of course, how much? Well, they've both spent huge amounts of money. We don't need to get into the how much today, but if you think about what they've spent, moving away from Mercedes, going and working with Honda, investing all the money in the team, recruiting, bringing Adrian Newey on board, they've spent a lot of cash. Now let's go back to why they did it. Has spending the cash worked? Well, this is where I think it's an absolute travesty for Aston Martin, for the shareholders, for the car company, everything, because this is a total program disaster. They haven't gone forwards, let's win championships and grow the brand. They've dropped to the back of the grid. It's as bad as it gets. They'd have been better off if they'd stuck with Mercedes. Now, in terms of what they've set about doing, you might say that if we look at the new regulations and the new power unit, they've gone about it in quite a siloed manner. I'd say extremely siloed. The fact that Adrian Newey and Lawrence Stroll seemed to only find out in November that they were even down on power and there were other issues coming up, and that the vibration issues only came out in sort of January. This was not only a very tight program, but it wasn't being done in a joint development fashion. Now, when you look at the where and the location, Silverstone and Sakura, 6,000 miles between those two locations, according to my computer. I'm assuming that it's correct. You've got different time zones, you've got different cultures that will come onto in the resources and the who, but it doesn't make it easy. So you have to put an extra level of effort in to figure out how to bring that through. Now, the approach, the how. Honda does the power unit, Aston Martin does the car. If you read into it, Aston Martin have set very tight power unit space constraints for Honda that Honda probably should have pushed back on, and we'll get into culture in a second. But basically, if you think of it, that Aston Martin have thought, right, we want the best space package that we can design to meet all the aerodynamic requirements. We want the best aerodynamic car we can have, but Honda, we're giving you quite a limited space to put this power unit in. Makes it pretty tough. But what really strikes me is, where's the governance? How did you not know at every stage of the way what was going on? Well, there's two teams in two different places, then with multiple sub-teams of different parts of those teams, with suppliers into those teams. Who's tracking the benefits, the why? Who's tracking whether or not we're going to deliver the scope? Who's tracking the approach and whether or not we're sticking to the approach? It sounds like they didn't have a very good approach, but governance is where you monitor, track and drive programs to stay within the rails of what you need them to perform, and it sounds like they didn't have any. An absolute travesty. In effect, when you have one team develops a power unit and they throw it over the fence to the other team who catches it and puts it in the car and it doesn't work, then everybody just says to each other it's not working. It just doesn't make any sense. A program like this should be integrated from the start. There's joint development of the specifications, there's joint development of the outlines and boundaries that we can work in, there's joint development of the simulations of how it's all going to go together, and right through the process it needs to be integrated, because ultimately it's an integrated package. The fact that they've done it separately just sounds crazy. Now, the who. Honda let their staff go, as we've said, into other programs. The fact that Honda didn't resource up is one thing. The fact that Aston Martin didn't know about it, incredible. How did Aston Martin not know that the Honda team weren't resourced up? The Honda culture, I'm guessing, is similar to a lot of engineering cultures in the Japanese engineering manufacturing sectors, and that is one of junior people cannot in any way challenge senior people. So if there were problems and a senior person wasn't letting it be known, it won't be known until it's already just too late. That's the first thing that the Japanese culture tends to lean towards. The second thing is they're extremely polite. Now, if Aston Martin are being pushy and saying we need you to squeeze your engine into a ridiculously small space, they'll probably try and do it rather than pushing back on Aston Martin saying, no, we need more space to make you a decent power unit. And I think now those questions and those answers are coming, but it's too late. The embarrassment's already there because the benefits, the why would you do this all in the first place? It's already lost. It's a total disaster. It's a PR disaster. It's a cost disaster. It's a benefits disaster. Every kind of disaster. In terms of when, you've got to know at every stage where you're at and how likely you are to hit and keep realistic time programs. And as you start to slip, you've got to come up with alternative ways to get there, to try and get through this barrier of you've got a hard deadline at the beginning of 2026 that you've got to have this new car ready. Ultimately, who's to blame? Right, that's the question that people want to ask. This is a Honda issue, this is a them issue. Aston Martin are the lead partner. They didn't manage Honda. They didn't check that Honda were resourced. They didn't check that they were meeting the specifications. They didn't check that they were integrating properly into their car because they didn't. And now it's a failure. Ultimately, this is a failing on Aston Martin as a program governance exercise. And Honda have their failings, but ultimately have to stand by as a partner to Aston Martin. So tragedy, but for me, it's Aston Martin all day long. I'm Fred Warner of 7Q. I get involved in programs in R&D and intervene and put programs back on track, often aligning the capital investments with the R&D plans, with the product strategies for companies, working with the boards, working with the CEOs, working with the investors to say this is what we want out of it, let's get the benefits. So if you've enjoyed this, please leave some comments, and if you want any help, Aston Martin, give me a shout.